Okay, you may begin.
Professor, it says that I cannot share the screen.
Sorry about that. Now you should be good.
Thank you, Professor. Daniel, you can begin.
Good morning, everyone. So we are Team 9 from college, consisting of myself, Daniel, Barbie, Nipuni, and Janet. And we'll be presenting today on the impacts of the housing affordability in Canada, especially from the perspective of the groups of people that were mostly impacted. Okay, so this is our methodology that we followed for our analysis. We wanted a quantitative measure for the housing affordability before we started analyzing, and that is the measure of housing affordability that you see there. It says that if people are spending more than 30% of their total income before tax on housing, on their shelter needs, then that means that their housing is unaffordable, or they're having some issues with affording their housing needs. So then we looked at the norm before the pandemic hit. So we know that housing affordability has been a crisis that Canada has been facing for many years. So we wanted to check what was the situation before the pandemic and try to see the groups that were mostly affected by the affordability crisis first, and then we came to the impact of COVID-19 when another crisis hit in 2020. And we wanted to see how COVID-19 further impacted these groups who were affected even before the pandemic. Then we looked at the relief measures or the government aids and support that were provided to these groups for when COVID hit as a countermeasure to COVID. Finally, we also looked at the possible long-term distortions or the effects of the housing affordability crisis. Next, so we're coming into the groups that we analyzed on. So first, the age groups. Now, we looked at the different age groups that you see there is 65 plus, 45 to 64, 30 to 44, 15 to 29. So we wanted to concentrate on the two groups, that is 15 to 29 and 65 plus. Now, the reason why we took these two groups is that we, again, going back to the methodology, we looked at the measure, and when we analyzed the proportion of the households who are spending over 30% of the income on rent and utilities, we saw that it is these two groups, 15 to 29 and 65 plus, that have been spending a large proportion of their income on rent. And we looked at 4 provinces during phase 1 of the competition. We looked at these 4 provinces as well: Alberta, BC, Quebec, and Ontario, because these were the ones that were affected by COVID the most. So looking at the data, if you see for the age group 15 to 29, there is a total of 437,230 number of private households in this age group, and the number of renters in this sector of private households is 79.65% of the total. So that much proportion of people are renting, and from this proportion, we can see that in each of the provinces, the the percentage of people who are been renting are spending more than 30% of their income. And that is what is shown from this graph. From the proportion of the total renters, the graph proportion has been taken from the total proportion of the renters. So that the data highlighted in the bluish green color. So that is the group that we're looking at now, 15 to 29. Then we looked at 65 plus. These were also a group that had to spend a lot of money or a larger portion of their income, over 30% on the rent and utilities. All right, so now coming to the next stage of our methodology, we looked at how COVID-19 impacted this specific group of 15 to 24. So in the previous data, that was from 2016. So that was the norm. Those were the two groups that were affected. Now, when we come to the COVID-19 impact, we see again, this group here is the most affected when it came to employment change or the losses in employment. The green and blue lines, they show the age group from 15 to 24. And it's clearly seen that from February 2020 to January 21, when COVID hit, the losses were seen the most in this group of people. All right, coming to the relief measures now. Now, government introduced many relief measures for this, and we looked at the CRB applications, which is the Canadian Recovery Benefits. And we could see that 254,770 total application of the applications were made by this age group, which is 14.85% of the total applications, which also ties with the employment loss, just showing that because of the high rates in the employment loss for this group, they had to apply for the benefits from the government. Okay, yeah, next is the group 65 plus. Government had plans to help seniors in this age group, and those are the Canada Pension Plan, the Survivors Pension, and the CPP Disability Benefits Program. And it's interesting to note that the pension plan was enhanced during the pandemic for those who made contributions to CPP. Coming to the next set of people, we after the age groups, now we are looking at the household types. Now we looked at 4 household types, that is female single with kids, or a male single with kids, a couple with kids, and a couple without kids. Now again, going back to the methodology, we looked at the measure, and that is the household that is spending over 30% of the income on rent and utilities is the female lone parent or the female single who's having kids. So it's clearly seen in all the 4 provinces that the highest proportion of the households spending over 30% of the income on rent and utilities are the females who are living alone or the single moms with their kids. Okay, so again, now next step of the methodology is the COVID-19 impact on this group. So when we looked at the data, we could understand that the drop in the employment for females was more than men. And that is clearly seen in this graph here, where the orange line shows the drop in the data drop in the employment of women. When we looked at the relief measures, there was a specific relief measure for people who had to take care of kids, and that is the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit. It was for supporting people who are unable to work because they must care for a child who's under the age of 12. So when we looked at the number of applications for this benefit, we could see that the number of applications by females with kids was much more than males. And that is 61.7% of the total number of applications for this benefit. So that's the first part. And now I'd like to hand over to Barbie, who will be going over the next slides.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, till now we got to understand how COVID-19 is a risk to different groups of society in Canada. There was definitely a lot of uncertainty as everyone faced income shocks and ultimately affected the housing market as it brought a halt to the construction market. But Canadian government was always at the back of their citizens, like how they got some relief measures for them to lower the to lower the affordability, the people could afford the houses here. So it has COVID has impacted the rentals and not only rental market but also the housing market in all. It has risen the rent prices in spite of the pandemic. Rental rates have been going up. The upward trend in the rent varied by province to province. As we check the data for British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec, in all these provinces, we saw that the rent rates were increasing because the demand was decreasing and there was more supply. And in the same way, if we see the housing market, in the housing market also the price is expected to increase. Nearly 48% of Canadians aged from 25 to 35 currently own home. Almost 25% of our house owners have purchased a new home during the pandemic. One reason is higher construction costs because of the rise in the building material prices and COVID safety and protocols. So with this, how government is going to help, how government has already helped them, and how what measures should government take to support people and prevent the spread of COVID-19. The province is introducing a new temporary rental supplement, halting evictions and freezing rents, among the other actions. Assisting renters. If we see in Manitoba, there was a policy that was introduced for the Canadians that was assisting renters. Rent assist significantly helps people who are at risk of homelessness and lifts many families above the poverty line. So the data that suggested that the CMHC data that the rent assist isn't driving up rents in Manitoba. Rent assist shortcomings show where future programs could make improvements. Accommodations in the bottom quartile of the rents are likely the types of accommodations that rent assist recipients are renting. Then if we see in British Columbia, there were many measures that were taken. The new rent supplement was one of them, which will provide the $500 per month to rent, which will pay directly to the landlords. This will halt the evictions by ensuring the landlord may not issue a new notice to the end tenancy for any reason. The program will also provide $300 per month for eligible households with no dependents and $500 per month for eligible households and dependents. For any rent charges, written notice to the tenants at least before 90 days of the implementation date. So these all measures were taken in the British Columbia to ensure that they don't face any problem and they adapt to the situation of the COVID. And if we see the Alberta's data, the Alberta government is committed to support the province's most vulnerable people impacted by COVID-19, including the individuals and families who receive the social assistance. Family and social supports info from the government of Alberta. And these were some of the benefits that was given by the government: income support, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, Government of Alberta Emergency Financial Assistance. These were some of the policies that were introduced in Alberta to handle the COVID situation. In Ontario, there was some like the Rapid Housing Initiative, and this created the new affordable housing that meets the need of the vulnerable people. It supported the creation of 3,000 new permanent affordable housing units. The National Housing Co-Investment Fund. It provides a low cost and forgivable loans for the construction and renewal of the affordable housing. Then one was the rental construction financing incentive. It offers the low cost loans to encourage the construction of the sustainable rental housing. Canada's first ever national housing strategy will help to drive the success of the Canada's housing sector by giving the more Canadians affordable homes. Housing affordable, then we could see that it has also impact on the homeless and homelessness. The Canadian Observatory on the homelessness categorizes the homeless population into three main categories: unsheltered, emergency sheltered, and the provisionally accommodated. So these were the three categories which had the main, which were impacted badly. And the government took some measures to control this. And now Janit will be sharing some keynotes and recommendations for the research done.
Thank you. So I'll be sharing some of the important keynotes. Everyone in Canada deserves a safe and affordable housing. Since you are living in the country, it is the responsibility of government or anyone to just make sure that you're getting a house, to say you have a roof under above your head so that you can just stay in. We want everyone to have a home they can afford and meets their need. We have to fix the responses urgent needs today to take long the systematic issues for better tomorrow. So it is the government who has to take the initiatives. It is government who has to take the initiatives to help the people along. So there are some of the recommendations and conclusions. First is to strengthen the middle class, as mentioned by Barbie, that there are some of the other initiatives taken by government. One of them is to one of them has 1 billion investment in the market to develop the houses to cut the chronic homelessness into half. So homelessness is basically the one who does not have home, but it is the homelessness is referred as people who mentally think that they don't have any shelters or any places to stay. That is also a huge problem in Canada. According to data, it is nearly forecasted that nearly 20 to 25,000 people stay homeless in a day. To build up 125,000 new homes, fuel the economy, create a new generation of housing in Canada. Aim. So government has aimed by 2020, everyone in Canada has a home they can afford and meets their need. All people living in Canada, regardless of citizenship, should have a home. That is the main motto of government. A dwelling that provides dignity, safety, and stable place to participate in Canadian society, regardless of the type of housing. Shelter cost should be less than 30% of the household income. So we saw before that older senior citizens as well as the youth, people between 90 to 25 are struggling hard enough to pay for their rents. They are nearly paying 50% of what they are earning. So it is like they always have it on the back of the mind that what if something happens, what if my income source stops, and how will I afford the houses? We have got the forecast then. So we see that the GDP in 2020 has dropped drastically, but then due to some of the other AIDS program, government, and then the immigration coming in, GDP is growing drastically up again in 2021 and is forecasted to decrease a bit, but the market in 2022 is going to be stable by the later half. COVID-19 pandemic has hit the housing sector particularly hard, but government has swiftly responded with an array of measures to alleviate the negative consequences of prices for tenants, borrowers, builders, lenders, and the overall housing market. A major factor depressing cost escalation in the low overnight interest rate, which is expected to remain 0.25% until at least 23. Other factors keeping down increasing in the construction are low inflation rate and increased prices for the new raw materials such as housing wood. There is again a news that the price of housing wood is going high. This is again one of the reasons why the prices of houses are going high, because the construction cost is comparatively more than what it used to be before. Then we have the immigration coming in. So it is forecasted that the government will allow nearly 400,000 immigrants to come. They may be in terms of permanent residencies or they may be the students, but they will definitely help the housing market, especially to maintain the gap between the demand and supply. More recommendations are the rental market. So the housing market is forecasted to grow by 2021 and the first quarter of 2022. Initially, we can see a decline in the housing market and it can stabilize since we see the youths are investing and it is going on. That's it for the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We will now have some questions from the judges if they have any.
I have one question. Did you guys look at the migration of people from rent to purchase property? And what we always hear, or what we've been hearing a lot, that people don't want to live in a condo anymore, and they want to live, if they get the opportunity to work remotely, they want to move outside of the like an urban area. Were you able to find any evidence of that is actually is not a hypothesis, or if it's a truth? And if you didn't, how would you think that would impact your recommendation? Because people won't be renting as much and they might be able to afford houses outside of the urban, which might be cheaper.
Yes, for sure. So that is giving birth to the suburb migration. So we have witnessed that Toronto and Montreal. So Toronto has nearly witnessed a drop of 50,375 of the population, whereas Montreal has witnessed the drop of 24,880 immigrant students, whatever. But the thing is that these guys are moving to the suburbs since they are getting new things. Now, a family of 4 living in a 2-bedroom house is staying in a 2-bedroom house before the pandemic. But since the need of everyone is now to work from home, so a father needs their particular space, children attending the Zoom lecture needs their own space. So yeah, they are planning to move out of the space and they are planning to go to the suburbs.
And if that's the case, how do you think your recommendation on rent would be impacted?
So what we thought was that as the immigrants are coming in and as the market is going to stabilize sooner or later, the people would again prefer to live in the more urban cities as they have more employment opportunities, more employment growth. Like a student to stay in a more urban place where he has more opportunities to cater and to fill in the basic needs.
Perfect, thank you.
I'll ask a question. I'm glad you guys included a bit of a gendered analysis at the beginning, because I think it's a really important topic with COVID. And I'm curious if you saw any data that connected the sort of challenges for women, like single women with children, and housing unaffordability. Like, was there any information about women being more impacted by like housing precariousness in the data that you saw, or was that not available in the data sets?
Yeah, so we did see that women were more impacted, basically because of childcare coming into place. So that's the main reason why they many actually left their jobs voluntarily to take care of their kids better during COVID. We didn't specifically get data on the number of females who left their jobs, but like the studies by the news articles that we went through, it did say that people were like women were more inclined to leave their jobs and help their children out during this time of pandemic, especially since more kids have been learning from their home, and that is why there was a drop in employment that we had shown earlier, like the number of women the employment losses for women were greater than that for men. I hope that answers.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. That was helpful.
All right, do any of the other judges have questions?
No, but I just want to say, like, I'm really glad that you guys, like, you found that interesting detail about the seniors pension and how it was like bumped up for the pandemic for anyone who contributed to CPP. And interestingly, in Ontario, the government only temporarily offered a slight increase for people on social assistance. It was, I think, like $100 a month, and you had to apply to get it. So I just thought it was really interesting that, like, despite you saying, like, seeing the data on like lower income people struggling more, and the only group that received assistance that got that automatic increase was seniors. So I thought that was a really interesting point for you to bring in.
Thank you.
All right, I thank you, group, for a fantastic presentation, and we will close this session, and we will be jumping over to presentation 3 now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.